Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Good Talks. I'm Harry Dix, Good Content Marketing Manager here at Good Data. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. As you know, if you've seen this show before, or if you're here for the first time, this is our monthly show covering all of the kind of different trending hot topics within the data analytics space. Each show I bring on some people, experts in their own fields within data analytics, to answer some of my questions and to paint you a picture of the specific topic. Today's topic, we'll be covering AI. And for those who saw it last month, we covered kind of AI in a fairly broad spectrum. Today we're covering AI and the semantic layer in data analytics, how the semantic layer plays a role alongside kind of AI within the analytics backend, front end within an analytics solution. Today I'm joined by Greta Bauer and Jan Savusta, both colleagues of mine at Good Data. Jan, aka Jacek, is an engineer within Good Data, and Greta is our GTM kind of product director here. Welcome both. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
You'll notice this show is our last one of the year before the holiday season, so we've got a bit of a Christmassy theme going. So happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. So today we'll be covering, as I said, AI and the semantic layer. We're hoping to kind of paint you a picture with some of the questions and introduce how the semantic layer plays a role within all of this. Before we start, let me just go through a couple of logistics things. We'll go through some of the questions, try to get an idea of kind of how AI and the semantic layer plays a role within both the kind of from a business perspective and from a more technical perspective, and obviously within the Good Data platform, as well as kind of across the analytics market. If you have any questions, please do feel free to add them to the comment section. We'll either try to answer them as we go, or if we have time at the end, then we'll address the answers when we're done as well. If we don't manage to get to them, don't worry, we'll answer them within the comment section afterwards. We'll also post some extra kind of reading materials, handy content surrounding the topic if you want to read into it further. So let's jump in. So, I mean, firstly, it's a bit of an obvious question, but Greta, what is kind of the relationship between AI and the semantic layer? Why are we talking about these two things today? Why is it relevant?
Yeah, excited to be here, excited to talk about this topic. I'm going to take a short detour before I answer your question, but I am going to answer it.
Absolutely.
Not to go down memory lane, but my very first job out of college, I was in consulting. My very first project was to build a Microsoft SSAS cube, which is basically a multi-dimensional semantic model. And then my very second project was building a framework manager model in IBM Cognos, which is a relational style semantic model. And from there, I probably worked with semantic models daily or weekly for the next 6 or 8 years. So semantic models are very near and dear to my heart, as funny as that sounds. Okay, so to get back to your question about the relationship between the two. So semantic layers have been around for a very long time when it comes to BI and analytics tools, traditionally to define metrics, to make the data a little bit more palatable for users, to interpret the field, to have business-friendly names, and to have clear calculations that are defined in one place, and so on. So in my perspective, from more of a business or use case perspective, for AI, the semantic layer provides that context just like for a business user that otherwise wouldn't exist, and enables AI to provide more precise and useful answers to users. Jacek, do you want to, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, hello everybody. So when we talk about generative artificial intelligence, we talk about large language models. And these models are, I mean, the basic models we know, and they are, for instance, under ChatGPT, and they are trained with public data. But when we talk about the semantic model of a specific customer, we are talking about private data some intellectual property. I agree with Greta that the semantic model is a big thing. We Good Data believe that this is the big thing. From my point of view, it's a best representation or best description of the data and metrics and everything around. And so it's the obvious way. It's obvious that training or fine-tuning large language models with this intellectual property, with this kind of description, the best description is the obvious way to go, the best way to go.
So, I mean, to sum it up in a few words, I mean, essentially, it's the semantic layer's ability to provide kind of that let's say readable, like business logic or business understanding to the data, so that it's easier to digest for the AI. Would that kind of sum it up in a few words for a layperson like you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
And you kind of touched on it already, but how exactly does kind of the semantic layer work to provide that business context to the AI? What's the process behind it that enables it to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe best exemplified just with an example. So, for example, if finance has a bunch of different reports and sales has a bunch of different reports, and all of those dashboards and reports contain, let's say, revenue type information. Ideally, the semantic layer will have the definition of revenue defined one time centrally in an agreed upon definition in one place. And so both finance and sales, when they use revenue, know that their answer is going to be the same. It's going to be repeatable. It's governed, et cetera. And so that additional business logic, I guess, is provided then to the AI to enhance the result of what's provided. So without a semantic layer, if calculations are made in each report or each dashboard and defined differently, and you're leveraging AI, how would it know which definition of revenue, for example, to use if you're asking it a question? It would, and I'm sure Jacek, you can expand on how this actually works, but it will return the answer that's most statistically, appearing most often, which may or may not be correct based on the question that's being asked.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it would then almost be guesswork, or a best estimate rather than a guaranteed like answer answer you can trust, essentially.
Yeah.
And what's your take on it, Jacek?
Yeah, so technically speaking, we are talking about context, and in the world of AI, we are talking about some kind of prompts or fine-tuning of large language models. In the case of semantic layer, what we do is we collect all the metadata about the semantic layer, and we create this context from those metadata. We can do it very easily because we have not only good APIs for our semantic layer, but also SDKs. We have even 2 SDKs, JavaScript and Python. And thanks to these SDKs, it's very easy to generate this context. What is hard here is how to structure the context so large language model understands the best, and there are no hallucination coming back from large language models. And this is what we are currently learning, and we are improving significantly. Also, there is one more concept of feedback. It's possible to let users to get feedback if the answer from large language model is good or bad, and we can fine-tune back large language model with this feedback as well to improve future quality of answers.
Okay, so then you can kind of polish it as it goes along, and it becomes more and more accurate, essentially.
Exactly.
And I mean, I guess kind of the next question then is kind of what are the actual like requirements for the semantic layer to play its role well? Like, is there Is there any more context you could give on that?
I think for me, from my perspective at least, I think it's pretty much the same types of requirements as being useful for data modeling and reporting. So if there's strong governance and structure and mechanisms in place to maintain and understand the data, and that enables trust in the data by the users, I think that's really important. And then, of course, good naming conventions, well-defined metrics, and being well integrated into the BI solution. So one, I guess, key thing is that at Good Data, we think that business users should be able to define new metrics, and it should be really easy for data developers to see what those business users are doing and ensure accuracy and consider if they should bring in those metrics into broader modeling usages. A semantic layer that's only editable or viewable by advanced developers is just not as useful overall. So kind of democratizing, I guess, to summarize it up, democratizing the semantic layer across the business and making it usable.
So yeah, basically giving as many people access as possible to really kind of work with it and get the most out of it then, even be it technical or business kind of users.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
And what would you say, is there sort of specific technical requirements that would be relevant here yet, Sek, or what do you think?
Yeah, so while we are learning the needs of large language models, we realize, or it's also a kind of feedback for us, what is missing in our semantic layer, what could help to these large language models. So we are extending semantic layers, and also we are extending our APIs and SDKs accordingly. We are adding new use case APIs and new functions in SDKs, which prepare better content for large language models. And we also extend the semantic layer itself, its properties. Recently, for instance, we started collecting feedback from users, and also how frequently users are using various objects in semantic layer. And this could be yet another input for large language models to prioritize some objects in semantic layer over another objects because they are, for example, more popular.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Actually, we have a question within the comments, which is probably relevant right now as we're talking about large language models, LLMs. Martin asks, do you have your own LLMs deployed in Good Data?
I think it's a question for me.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so the answer is not yet. And the main reason is total cost of ownership. Currently, only big players can operate their own large language models. But I'm pretty sure it will change in near future. There are projects like, for instance, Tiny Llama, which training should be finished before end of this year, and these more concise tiny models should be even small companies like Good Data should be capable of operating such models with reasonable total cost of ownership. So in the beginning of next year, I suppose we bring first, let's say, related beta feature to the product. Hopefully.
Okay, brilliant. So watch this space, but hopefully Q1 next year we'll see something in beta. My next question, you mentioned it earlier actually about the kind of potential for kind of the LLM kind of hallucinating. What does having a semantic layer kind of like, does it mitigate the risk of that happening? You did touch on it earlier, but what's the kind of the bigger picture with that?
Yeah, my take on this is the term hallucination with AI just basically means that the response is inaccurate. I was reading a recent, actually, it was a McKinsey article that they published, their global annual AI survey where they survey executives, and I think it was released about a quarter ago. And it cited that the top risk that businesses surveyed are facing is inaccuracy. So basically, hallucinations is the top risk and concern of folks out there adopting AI. And I think that is because LLMs are kind of a black box. They just use this pattern matching or statistical likelihood to give the responses back. And if you ask the LLM how it arrived at that answer, it will again just give you the most statistically likely answer. So basically, all of what we just discussed, the context that the semantic layer reduces the likelihood of it does reduce the likelihood of a hallucination because it basically creates bounds for the LLM to work within. So you can think of it as like almost just like tightening a playground around what data the LLM has to work with. Jacek, I'm sure you have a more technical answer than that, though.
Yeah, so generally speaking, the better semantic layer is less hallucinations appear. Recently, I read a comment on Twitter from a person from OpenAI, and he stated that large language models produce nothing else than hallucinations. Just some of them are wrong. Yeah. And that's yet another definition of the black box. But I totally agree that having best class semantic layer and properly prompt or fine-tune a large language model is the way how to drastically reduce hallucinations. And the structure of the context of prompts and fine-tuning is the hard problem we have to solve, and we already solved a part of that. Technically, we generate various sets of questions and answers. We even generate intentionally wrong answers to teach large language model what is wrong. We label various parts of the knowledge in large language model to prioritize some part over another, and so on. By the way, hallucinations, from my point of view, maybe this is not the biggest problem for the future. Even bigger problem can be what is called prompt injection. It was very nicely demonstrated by Andrej Karpathy in his latest LLM intro video. There are many ways how end users can ask questions in a special way and bypass filters which are installed in large language models and get answers which we as a provider want to provide to these end users. Yeah. For instance, you can translate your question into hexadecimal code and ask with hexadecimal code, and you bypass all the filters. And there are maybe 8 or 9 types of such attacks. So this is yet another risk for near future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting stuff. Conversely, are there ways kind of that AI can help, like if we flip it around, I guess, like if AI can help create a robust semantic layer? So like if you look at it from the other perspective, is it kind of useful the other way around?
Yeah, we're actually getting asked this question a lot from customers. And it's usually framed as like, how can AI help not just my end users with a chatbot, with Q&A, the typical use case of AI, but how can it help my developers? So running with, I guess, like a financial example, if you're building a model on financial metrics, we're seeing that AI could recognize that that's the case and recommend, let's say, 10 other financial metrics that should be built that are relevant to that data set. And then the model can create them automatically. And it will probably do a better job at that because it doesn't have to build the calculation strictly on SQL. It has the semantic layer to interact with, so it's going to be much more accurate when making those recommendations. Jacek, anything to add there?
I totally agree. I think we are in the beginning of exciting future. Currently, many BI vendors are trying to fine-tune large language models. They are trying to force these models to generate semantic layer from scratch on top of some even crappy data. And more such vendors will try it. I think in the end, it may happen that there will be just one open source large language model focused on semantic layer and analytics, and users will just connect the data, and it will save, let's say, 80 or even 90% of their time, and all the attributes, facts, metrics, and even reports and dashboards will be auto-generated, and the user will be just a guardian who will polish, for instance, hallucinations or some more complex things which cannot be auto-generated by large language models. But it may be also dependent on the industry. I mean, there are quite open industries, but also very proprietary industries, like, for instance, military, and maybe large language models for military won't be open source anytime in the future. We will see.
Yeah, understandable. I think that's all the questions I had. Actually, I do have one more that kind of was relevant to what you were just mentioning a moment ago, Greta. In terms of kind of like the end user, what would you see as kind of, and this is kind of going back to maybe last month's episode at a slightly higher level, but like, what would you see as the most desired AI capabilities for the end users? Like, what do you think in the coming future is going to be kind of the most useful and most relevant versus potentially at the moment things that are like seen as being very cool, but maybe don't actually like provide that much value to the end user? Like I can imagine kind of, you know, NLQ, NLG, what, like which ones do you think are going to be the most desired from like a user standpoint, the most useful?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think the chatbot Q&A functionality, if the data is set up right to support it, can be really useful to answer, you know, natural language type questions and even build visualizations or dashboards just based on natural language questions. I think there's probably some other stuff that end users, you know, those that don't have super high levels of, you know, coding experience might enjoy. And this might be a little bit more ML leaning, but it feels like AI, ML, and analytics are all kind of converging in a way. So I think it's relevant. But I think any tool that enables an end user to be more self-sufficient. So for example, like we're recently on a prior call today reviewing some stuff about auto forecasts and clustering, and then being able to see the explainability and the code behind it. So I think that for end users, like giving them the tools to do those types of things themselves, but also being in a platform that allows them to then reach out to an analytics developer and say, hey, can you take a look at this forecast? Is it accurate? Can you check the code behind it? Or, you know, in the case of AI, what is the LLM doing? And show some explainability to build trust and all collaborate in one platform. I think that's hopefully where the future is headed.
So yeah, efficiency being one of the main kind of knock-on effects, anything that can enables you to make decisions kind of more quickly and with less needing to dig around in the data, right?
Exactly. And the closer you can put the decision, you know, the user to the decision, I think is where we're at least trying to go. And it seems like that's where the industry is going to.
Yeah, makes sense. And from your point of view, Jacek, within the developer community, do you see kind of ML/AI like leaning towards certain trends, or what's your take on it? Something similar, or have you noticed anything different?
Yeah, so I think, well, so currently most popular are tools like GitHub Copilot for developers, I mean. So productivity of the developer is the main topic. And when I say developer, it can be analytical engineer, it can be hardcore developer or database expert, it can be business analyst or machine learning data scientist. But in the end, everything can be exposed as a code. And so you can have all parts of your, let's say, data pipeline, starting from extracting data and ending up with some prediction or some business alert on top of data. Everything this can be in the same repository, consistently versioned, and everything can be powered by large language models. And more you use this approach, the better answers you get from for instance, from GitHub Copilot. This is my personal experience. We are now evaluating GitHub Copilot in Good Data. And after, in the beginning, it wasn't that good. But after using it, let's say 1 month, I am really excited. Sometimes I'm really excited how good output can be get from it. Yeah, especially when I'm intensively working on top of the same repository with the same code. Yeah. So yes, I think it can save 90% of, by the way, very annoying work. I mean, various boilerplating. Everything this can be managed by artificial intelligence, and I can focus on the hard things like design and very complex algorithms. But we'll see, maybe in the future, even very complex algorithms will be managed fully by large language models. Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Okay, yeah. But for the moment, we get to do the fun stuff, and the AI does the boring manual, usually previously manual stuff. Cool. Okay, well, I think that's all we have time for. I don't think we have any more questions, but if any more pop up in the comments, then we'll answer them directly within the comment section after the show. As I said earlier, we'll put in some links to further reading related to today's topic and today's questions, so feel free to check those out. They'll be there in just a few minutes within the comment section. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Jacek and Greta for answering my questions, for painting a good picture about AI and the semantic layer. Thanks everyone. Have happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you again soon with another show in the new year. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.